Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, March 25th, 2022. Today's Chairman's Report is guest written by Jade Walle. Jade is a partner at a CPA firm and is on the board of Americans for Fair Taxation. War. How would the fair tax factor in? It goes without saying that the root causes of war are multifaceted and complex. When human beings are involved, egos, predispositions, prejudices, and preconceived notions are certainly in play when war breaks out, among multiple other components. Now, as I write this article, Russia's invasion into Ukraine has been going on for over 3 weeks now, with new reports of death and destruction every day. Now, the question that's worth asking is how the fair tax could possibly contribute to lessening or even preventing the prospect of war within a nation. First, let's look at the causes of war. Now, while not all-encompassing, several substantial root causes that can and have historically ended in war include the following. Weakness. One of the greatest lessons learned from the World War II era is how Neville Chamberlain's initial acquiescence in permitting Hitler to only take the Sudetenland, as outlined in the Munich Agreement of 1938, didn't work. This example of weakness and lack of backbone and courage accomplished the exact opposite of what Prime Minister Chamberlain wanted and likely believed that his appeasement would do. The lesson learned is that weakness is provocative. Divisiveness. Abraham Lincoln famously said in 1858, prior to becoming president, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Now, most everyone would agree that this principle is true in virtually all aspects of life, whether it be in our politics, our companies, and most certainly our families. When people, groups, regions, or countries do not see fundamental truths, whatever they may be, in the same light, they become divided. And when we take a divided people, group, or country to its logical conclusion, war is ultimately inevitable, although it's often unseen in its early stages. Stage left. Enter the fair tax. Strength. The fair tax will bring many incredible things to all American citizens, but one of the paramount underlying principles is that of freedom. With the fair tax, there will be no more intrusive IRS digging into every detail of your financial life. Under the fair tax, the government no longer has any business knowing how many square feet of your home are devoted to your home office, how many miles you drive for business, how much you spent on medical care, whether you made charitable contributions, and if so, to whom and how much you earned from your job, your investments, or any other income source is none of their business as well, and the list goes on and on and on. When people feel free from the shackles of the IRS and our current income payroll tax system, they'll be innately empowered to blaze their own trail in all aspects of life, uninhibited by a federal taxation system that currently introduces and injects roadblocks at almost every turn. Another aspect that a taxation system like the fair tax that's based on freedom and anonymity brings is that it is a strong contributor to a group of people, states, or regions loving their country. Now, growing up, it seemed like every other movie I watched had at least one quote where someone replied to a question with, "Hey, it's a free country." Now, although recently our freedom can be compared to the frog in a pot of water where the temperature is slowly being turned up, the fair tax would usher this phrase back into our everyday vernacular like no other piece of legislation ever has. Unity. When people love their country, it tends to be less divided, making it stronger overall and less susceptible to being overthrown, as Mr. Lincoln's previous quote amply articulates. It is extremely difficult to conquer a truly strong country that feels free, and even more difficult to divide that country from within. When the IRS is finally eliminated, one of the single strongest elements of internal U.S.-class warfare and domestic strife will be completely eradicated. Currently, every political cycle is guaranteed to encompass the rich need to pay their fair share mantra, while both sides of the aisle will be justifiably accused of tax and spend policies. Now, an immense amount of time, treasure, talent, energy, and lobbying effort is wasted every year trying to amend the income tax code. Every 2-year congressional cycle sees literally thousands of bills proposing amendments to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. The politicians on both sides of the aisle are constantly trying to exploit humanity's most susceptible vice and the most evil of the 7 deadly sins, that being envy. The fair tax will single-handedly end this continued villainization of our fellow Americans and be even more progressive than our current system. Now that means the working poor and those earning and spending the least among us will be much better off under the fair tax than under the current income tax system. While there are certainly a myriad of other causes of war, there's no question that weakness and divisiveness are 2 extremely prominent and potent causes of the most gruesome of human enterprises. Now, war may still come knocking at our door someday, but our nation being on the right side of these 2 elements is essential to our longevity and continued way of life. Let's usher in the fair tax and simultaneously make America both stronger and unified. So in conclusion, what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives demanding that if the government really wants to eliminate the burden of filing income tax returns, they should enact the fair tax and do away with tax returns altogether. The great 18th century Irish statesman Edmund Burke made a statement that applies in many ways. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. If you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to FAIRtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your member of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.